This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back to the show. Oscar Swaim joining us here, coaching for relevance. Sorry, Randy, I might have missed that. What were you saying?
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just was just going to give a hint of what where I was going to take this today.
Great. Let's tell our audience, what are we taking? Where are we taking it all today? Go ahead.
Well, what I will do, and we'll get this started. One of the reasons I'm going to bring this is because it's very aligned with organizational maneuverability, but it's also you'll be aware, because after I go over this a little bit, I'm going to mention a couple of things about leadership and what leaders need to be doing right with this, with their people like this. And I've mentioned one or two of those on previous shows, probably quite a while back, but it'll bring some of that back to it. And this really does have an insight relative to leading your teams and people working in perhaps challenging situations or whatever, and in some cases what the leader needs to be aware of, and to know that they're interacting correctly to bring the person. So just a few things there, and I'll mention a couple of the things after I go over this basic concept and everything. So we'll do that, and like I said, at the end, I'm going to kind of follow up with a little bit of a conclusion that highlights some of the things that I've mentioned before, but some aspects that true leaders perhaps need to be thinking about. And so we'll just go with that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And by the way, I want to point out a little bit of your background and what you do, and also your book, film, movie in the works. When is that out yet for us to see?
Well, the autobiography is obviously out on Amazon, but the movie is going to be published in about 3 weeks, because it's going to be made available to the public December 14th. Wow. And it's and I've been amazed at people that have seen the little minute and a half, a point about the story and everything, and they can't wait to get the movie when it comes out. And I've been very humbled by that in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but yeah, December 14th is when it's going to be made available. I mean, the movie is complete, and I think that the marketing folks are actually putting that on some of the platforms. It's going to be on HBO, Netflix, and a bunch more. And people can order it on DVDs and all that. And but like I say, that's going to be made available to the public for their purchases and all that December 14th, which is only about 3 weeks away. So.
Wow. This is exciting stuff, and I'm excited for the holiday season and everything. So please, let's get started for today, guys.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what I want to do is talk a little bit about this, because I'm going to bring an aspect that is sometimes not fully understood with leaders or managers and leaders today. And what I will point out to you, and I'm just going to read you 8 sentences here in a minute. But really, this came from when I was listening to an interview with a man named Mark Jobe, and his wife Sandy was sitting there. But he has a concept, and this can be very unique, and he basically brought it to a faith-based concept. And I'm not going to bring it to that, but when I heard it, I realized that this is huge about leadership. Yeah. It is. Totally. And so I'm going to bring it just to a leadership aspect of it and everything. But it's as I was listening to the interview, everything in that said, oh, that is so aligned with kind of a lot of what I've been doing and what I've been, talking to people and things like that. And so I'll just kind of share this, and then I'll go over the 8 questions. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about just some things that leaders need to be aware of, and leaders need to be thinking about, kind of thing, because that's what sometimes people don't think about. But what I will say is on this, that like I say, the people on this was Mark and Sandy Jobe. It was actually a very good interview, but basically, in quoting it, he quoted uh, an aspect that he kind of has identified, and I'm giving him total credit on these statements and on this one thing. But then, I'll be bringing some leadership aspects to it that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people don't think about. But what it is for Mark, he came from a little bit of a struggling early on life, and part of that because he mentioned in this interview, and I think I got it correct. He mentioned in this interview that when he was born, his mother was like 14 years old, and
Uh,
and stuff like that. And so it's just sort of kind of amazing. But what it is, and he's actually connecting with people, making them better. In fact, I think he's a pastor now, but he has this aspect that he has kind of created, and I'm going to give him credit for it for this. But it's this aspect of orphan spirit. When you have people in your family or in uh, church, or what I'll do is I'll bring it to your workplace. If you have people in your workplace that are struggling with a certain orphan spirit, um, you got to be able to connect with them correctly. And I'll mention that at the end of this. But in the process of sort of describing this in the interview, he came up with 8 sentences. And let me just give you the 8 sentences because it shows a good picture of this. When you're talking about perhaps, and he called these the symptoms of the orphan spirit, kind of thing. And it really does show that very well. So the first sentence is simply like this. If you feel like if you feel like no matter how successful you become, it's never enough. When you think that you are
it's
successful
true.
on some, but you think it's not enough. It's never enough. Guess what? That can be one evidence of this orphan spirit where you're feeling like an orphan kind of thing and all that. So the first question was if you feel like no matter how successful you've been, it's never enough. That's the first statement. The second statement said this: if your self-worth is connected to how well you perform, and that's it.
Wow.
That can be an evidence of this orphan spirit. Because guess what? There's a lot of factors that involve in any situation that you're involved with, kind
Yeah.
of thing. And some of those may have been unpredictable, which is an organizational maneuverability sort of concept and everything.
Yeah.
So that's those first 2 statements. Let me give you the next ones.
Sure.
The third statement is this: no matter how much affirmation someone gives you, you still don't feel valued. You know what? No matter how much affirmation someone gives you, you still don't feel valued. And you know what? That's the third symptom of this orphan spirit. And again, I give him credit for it because he's the one that came up with these, and he's dead right, and he's very aligned with a lot of stuff that I bring and stuff. But it's no matter how much affirmation someone gives you, you still don't feel valued, and that's the third uh, symptom on this. The fourth symptom is simply this: in the hierarchy of your world, you justify stepping on others to get to the top. And that's an interesting point. In the hierarchy of your world, you justify stepping on others to get to the top. Is that how you really get to the top? Not really, but you know what? If that's the way somebody is sort of thinking or coming across as, that's a symptom of the orphan spirit that can be dysfunctional and everything. And so like I said, I just said in the hierarchy of your world,
Mm-hmm.
you justify stepping on others to get to the top. You know what? That's not how you should get to the top. The fifth sentence said simply this, okay? titles matter to you because you feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If the
Yeah.
title is all you're about, not the people, then you feel less than in that.
Wow.
And so it's just something, like I said, these are sentences that he came up with, and I totally give Mark total credit for this. And
Mm-hmm.
if he ever watches this video, I'm glad to say that. I totally give him credit for it. So again, if titles matter to you because you feel less than, okay. Um, Number 6 says no matter how many times your family or spouse tells you they love you, you still feel unloved.
Huh.
You know, and that's a sort of a point on this too, and goes with how your team members really feel about you, but what you're feeling of that and what you're kind of sensing of that. So that's another symptom of
Mm-hmm.
the orphan spirit. That's the number 6. The number 7, every famous person you meet is another notch in your belt, and you name drop to feel more significant. You know, and let's face it, a lot of people in our society do that.
Oh, all the time. It drives me crazy. I'm sorry. It
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
It does.
it does. And you know what? It's okay
Oh.
if you spent some time with somebody who's famous, which I've had the opportunity to do that to it. It's great
And
to
it is
kind of point.
exciting and be
It
like, but
is.
not like, oh my God, I'm so cool or like I'm better than you.
That's
They,
exactly the point. That is
yes,
exactly the point,
exactly.
my
So,
friend. That is
yeah.
true.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true. And so when you're sitting there and you're trying to say that it's all about you, guess what? That's part of this symptom of the orphan spirit. So if every famous person you meet is another notch in your belt, and you name drop them to feel more significant and try to get people to sort of feel significant for you. And that is the 7th statement. And every one of these are symptoms of the orphan spirit. And if you think about it, statement number 8, and I slightly modified, but it says exactly the same
Hmm.
thing, because most of this one on his statement, he brought it to, faith-based stuff. But I'm just kind of bringing it to the truth that he mentioned there on here. And but the 8th one says, when you say truth doesn't apply to you,
Hmm.
that's not good. And so those are the 8 sentences that he wrote down. And I wrote them down because I said these are
Yeah.
absolutely great, and they're very aligned with a lot of what I have brought, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But when you think about these different sentences and you think about aspects of that in perhaps people that you work with, people that you're connecting with. It might be people in your company or in your team, might be family, who knows, kind of thing. But the bottom line, and if you think about it, there's some aspects about this about how are you really connecting, even with your rising stars, your youth
Yeah.
when they're coming up, and things of that nature. So if you think about these 8 statements that I just
Hmm.
mentioned, they are the statements that Mark created, and he totally has my compliments
Hmm.
for that because they are very aligned with a lot of what I bring, and they're very right. But each one of those 8 statements is a symptom of the orphan spirit, where you feel like you're not really part of the family, you feel like you're not really part of the team, you kind of feel over here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and these all, if you see people on your team that are kind of measuring some of these out, or modeling some of these, what are you going to do as a leader?
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring a couple of things to that, because we have to be aware this is a orphan spirit. But the bottom line is, one of the things that and you've heard me say this on the
Hmm.
podcast show before, but if you think about it, as a leader, if your entire mindset is to point fingers at people and dictate to them, and tell them what to do, guess what?
Yeah.
You build this, you grow this, not the reality and the success for your team. And the
Hmm.
bottom line is, what you would love to do is to interact with your team in such a way that all of these can be set aside,
Of
and
course.
they truly become, and they set this orphan spirit aside and truly become something magical. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize, because it's a lot of this can happen when somebody on your team doesn't believe what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you think about it, and this is another thing that I'll sort of add to it,
Sure.
to this, but it's this aspect. When you think of these symptoms, realize that when you're the leader or the manager in your team, every person in your team is a little different.
Yeah.
And you know what? It might be that each one of them shows a couple of symptoms of orphan spirit,
Yeah.
but a little bit different on each person. You may have one person that talks about one thing, or represents one thing in what they do, how they communicate, and how they're going about it.
Yeah.
And
Ah.
somebody else does it a little bit different to represent one of the other sentences, one of the other symptoms. And the thing that I simply throw out to people that are listening, that are leaders, or all that kind of stuff, what do you need to do differently
Yeah.
to make sure that this does not come in and really create your business and minimize the success that you can have because of what it's doing to your people,
Mm.
because of how this orphan spirit is getting in the way? And one of the things uh, that I tell people is you have to have some awareness of it, but also realize that you don't want to just come along and point fingers and dictate to people, but you can't also just go in and tell jokes, because you know what? If you go in and tell a joke to get people laughing
Yeah. Right.
so that you can control them, you know, what you're doing there is they have a sense that you're trying to manipulate. And that isn't, basically what you want to do as a leader is learn to ask some of the great questions so that you can have some very peaceful conversations about something. If you're aware of one of your team members that is showing one of these symptoms of this, you know what? You can ask a great question that just helps them feel very comfortable to respond and answer it. And you can have a short discussion, a short chat, not with you just telling them what to do, but helping them get a sense of what they can develop to get
Yeah.
beyond that, where it's not holding them back. And that's something that is that sort of coaching facilitative style, where it's not just dictatorial control freak stuff. And and these are just aspects that a lot of people don't fully understand. And what I loved about him
Hmm.
is he brought all this as a faith-based spiritual aspect. But what I realized after listening to these sentences and all this, and I wrote them all down,
Ah.
and the reason that I did is because what I realize is that when you look at a leadership aspect on this, there's an aspect of true leadership to each one of these, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also an aspect of neuroscience.
Okay.
Are you
Yep.
aware of what your brain is doing if your brain is gravitating to one of those symptoms?
Mm.
Kind of thing. And that's where in the leader, if you ask a great question, you can get a short discussion that help them overcome that and bring some of the neuroscience processing and awareness to put the symptom aside and to know where they're going. And so all of these are aspects that, like I said, when I listened to
Mm.
him on his interview, it was like, oh, that is awesome. Because you know what? It is. It's all about, not only is it about the faith-based stuff that he was bringing it for, but it's also so key in terms of leadership, in terms of neuroscience, and being aware of how you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get your processing. And are you aware mentally of how these symptoms are interacting and how these symptoms are perhaps controlling what you're wanting to do? And to what extent do you need to be able to put that as symptom aside and actually take a look at what you really want to accomplish and
Yeah.
not let that interfere with you. And but the other part of that is, as a leader, you know what? To what extent do you have to develop your awareness
Yeah.
and your vision so that you can tell when some of the people or all of the people perhaps on your team are being affected by one of these symptoms? And how are you going to come alongside with them, not just point fingers and
Of
dictate and
course.
threaten, but
Yep.
to come
Not gonna go that
alongside,
route. Yep.
as a friend, as a leader, as a cohort, as somebody who believes in them, that you can help them overcome that and soar past it and
Ah.
not let it infect them again. And so that's just a key aspect about this whole aspect. Like I said, when I heard him talking about them, and I'll tell you what, if anybody knows Mark and Sandy Job, and if you ever talk to them, tell them they have my compliments. No two ways about it. Because in bringing this up, it was great. They brought it up in a little bit different, a picture, but
Yeah.
guess what? It's very aligned to both pictures, and
Ah.
um, and I give him credit for what he came up with on this. And because you know what, when you're talking about organizational maneuverability, and you talk about when things, and this is very common in today's world, when you have things that are a little bit unpredictable, they're sort of variable. They may have factors that come on scene that you
Yep.
didn't expect and
Of
it
course.
didn't fit just a rote academic picture.
Mm-hmm.
Then guess what? How are you going to be aware that one of these is coming on scene, and what do you need to do about it as a person, as a somebody who may be restricted by the orphan spirit because of the symptom, or how are they going to overcome it? Or as a leader, how are you going to help what do you need to do differently? I've already mentioned a couple of things: asking the right questions and having the conversations, not in a way where you're dictating and being a control freak, but how you're being a real aligned partner in what they're doing, and they have a sense of that. And those are just aspects that you have to be thinking about when you're talking about this. And like I said, it's very aligned with organizational maneuverability and things that are just unpredictable and not whatever. But these are aspects that a lot of people that are managers and leaders in our world today don't fully have a picture of, because they're in a lot of them, not all of them, but in a lot of them, their only picture in their mind is, I'm just here to point fingers and tell you what to do. You just shut your brain off and do what I tell you to. And
Yeah.
you know what? If that's your mindset and that's what you're thinking, you're not being a true leader, because a true leader gets radical success out of the team. And one of the ways that they do that is by connecting with each of their people and helping them overcome any stresses, any challenges, and helping them reach radical success with their part of
Yep.
it. And as a leader, you have to be aware of that. And so this, like I said, I just gave Mark Job some commendation and compliments on that, because I wrote all these down for that reason. I just said, you know what, this is very aligned with all that I do too, and I give him credit for the fact that he put these, but they're very aligned. And so the bottom line, I'll just leave with people. I know the time's getting close, but the for the leaders, how are you going to
Yeah.
be aware
Yeah.
that the orphan spirit is sneaking in? And
Mm-hmm.
what are you truly going to do to help people overcome it? Not only individual people, but the team. And also, go figure, for you, the leader, to overcome it. And also, and this is another sort of aspect about it that's kind of a little bit humorous, but if you look at the people that are your managers and leaders,
Yeah.
maybe you notice one thing with them. Who knows? I'm not saying you do. I'm not saying you got to really go point fingers or do anything like that. But sometimes you can just have the right conversations. And, sometimes when you have conversations about what your team is doing with other people, they kind of go, oh boy,
Yeah.
that,
For
you know what?
sure.
I got to do that with my team, kind of
Yeah.
thing. and radical results can sometimes happen when you do that. So it's really, like I say, it's just this aspect of orphan spirit that Mark came up with. And it's just a good insight, but it's also a good insight when you're a leader, how you truly need to do that. And I brought out a few of the things, part of that.
Beautifully said today. Well, as always, thank you so much, Randy. Randy, how can we reach out to you?
Well, you can go to my website, coachingforrelevance.com. And if you go on the front page, if you go down to the home page of it at the very bottom, it has my email on it, and it has my cell phone number. If anybody wants to call and just have a chat, we can do that. I'm not going to do any cold sales or anything like that. But if somebody has a need, yeah, I'll come up with a sell thing on it, and if they want to do that, we can do that. But if they just want to have a conversation, we can do that.
Wow. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you, Randy, and best of luck. And we're waiting for December 14th for the big release, right?
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Same here. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day, Randy, and happy holidays. It's in the air. I'll talk to you before Thanksgiving. Wait, or no? Yeah, I'll talk to you next week. Awesome. Perfect.
So,
I'm confused.
So I'll tell you what, it's just, wonderful. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and my pleasure for you too. And
ditto.
A wonderful holiday.
Thank you so much, sweetheart. Enjoy the day. Bye-bye.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. Childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.